Hey everybody, welcome to a special edition of the House of Sunny podcast. It's actually a video version that we're doing specially for our elite squad on patreon.com/House of Sunny. So thank you to all of our patrons, and I'm on hiatus for a month, but before I go, Doug and I decided we would do a video response video for y'all to keep you occupied, because I know you're going to miss me, because Doug is, who knows how he's going to do.
Come on.
Right, Doug?
How could you even question such a thing?
All right, so the first video that we've chosen to pick apart is a video that Doug texted me this morning and said, I don't know if I can do this. My blood pressure is sky high. It's the Al Jazeera video on socialism. And man, it's good with the kids, Doug. It's a good video with the kids.
Yeah, you need to that's right. I think you kind of need to set that up a little bit. Now, everyone's going to see the video who's watching this, right? They can actually see it, or are we just talking?
I think you can see it. I mean, anyone who's listening to this audio, go over to YouTube and check it out on video. Actually, if you're the Elite Squad, you're getting it on video because I'm going to do a private YouTube post. I don't think this isn't going out on our regular channels. So
Okay.
You're seeing this on video most likely, and obviously this is a very pretty girl in a color that really flatters her skin tone.
Right. If I didn't want to punch her, I'd be attracted to her.
Right. And, the devil does not look like red-faced with horns. Like, honestly, I'm an atheist and I'm using that as a metaphor, but
Sure.
they are selling you socialism in a very pretty package here. So let's get started and let her start speaking. Because she's also really funny, and she's obviously even smarter than Ocasio-Cortez. I think she's got a few more brain cells.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Alrighty.
that's what's insidious about this.
Here we go.
Socialism, the monster hiding under America's bed. Our chupacabra, our Candyman. Say it 3 times into a mirror and your kid goes to college for free.
Okay, there's that word again, free. This is my first thing. Like, socialists always love to say it's free. It's generosity. It's free. There's nothing free about this. Things have to be paid for in reality. It may not seem like that in the United States, where we keep spending and our debt keeps climbing and we've so far not really paid a lot of obvious consequences that we can connect to that. But there's no free lunch.
Well, the other thing that struck me was this chupacabra reference. Socialism is some like Bigfoot apparition, or something.
Right.
I mean,
Something we can't really see.
Freaking real, people.
Yeah. Right.
We've kind of seen it. It's kind of happened in just a couple places.
Yeah.
Where a few 100 million people have died. So
it's more. It's more like it's not our chupacabra. It's our neighborhood cat. We know him very well.
Right. It's like the neighborhood guy who's peeking in your window that everyone knows.
Right.
This isn't a mythical creature.
Right. Okay. Let's keep going.
Christians are so used to demonizing socialism that most don't really know what it is, or they're shy to admit that they're curious about it. Like how most adults are afraid to watch the Twilight series because what if they discover they're totally on Team Edward? But thanks to a 76-year-old self-described democratic socialist, and now a whole host of candidates running openly...
1 second. Isn't Bernie Sanders a self-described communist?
No.
Wasn't he a member of the Communist Party at one time?
Probably.
Anyway, he's modified his
known as
language. All right, here we go.
Socialists, maybe it's time to understand it. We're looking at some of the biggest myths told about the S word. Hit it, Kate!
That's the kind of weird, wacky thing that makes this cool.
Yeah, this all has the trappings of this hip,
Yeah.
light video, which is very, I think it's very evil because it's
Yeah.
it's taking a very serious topic that obviously, you and I and the people probably listening to this realize the implications of this and what she's about to talk about. And this is just like some light, like after school special level explanation. It's almost like, well, I mean, come up with your own analogy about how evil that is. But
yeah, Venezuelan children are dying of hunger, and they're playing the recorder.
And making Twilight references.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going.
All heard socialism described by the right. You wait in lines for hours, you eat what little nutrients are available, and everyone wears the same thing. Why does socialism sound a lot like Disneyland?
What? Right? I mean, Disneyland, there's actually food at Disneyland. I don't know what she thinks she's saying there, honestly.
Well, yeah, right. Like if you wait in line at Disneyland, you end up with like a corn dog or something at the end of it.
And a roller coaster. You actually get something.
And you volunteer to be there because you want to be. In Venezuela, you wait in line not because you want to be, because you're starving to death. And if you're lucky, you get like a dog's paw to eat or whatever.
You get to gnaw on a dog's paw. All right, here we go.
Socialism is a favorite straw man of the right, used to disparage any candidate that mentions anything that resembles
socialism.
Something like generosity.
It's just a straw man that we've created.
Or Bernie Sanders. And instead of including socialist voices on television to clarify, they actually have segments like this.
I got to go to the liberal panel. It's got to be tough for you to look at your candidates and see how boring and stiff
really
they are. They're
understand
stiffer than you.
this.
Well, they are. Well, thanks a lot. But they did talk about policy, unlike the Republican debates, and it's not socialism. It's capitalism. It's democratic socialism within a capitalist society. You want to talk about giving stuff away?
Yeah.
It's giving stuff. What Republicans do is give stuff to the top 1%. Is Social Security socialism? Medicare socialism?
Yes.
Medicaid socialism?
Yes.
You want to take all that away?
I do. I want to take all of it away.
See
you
how that
stupid
works
panel.
Campaign.
I want to take it all away. I don't want the government taking my money. I can spend it better than they can, and I can't believe I'm yelling at you again.
Oh my God. Greg Gutfeld just lost an argument to an animatronic gag he scripted to make himself look smarter. That's like getting your ass kicked by a punching bag.
What's weird here is I don't think he lost the argument. So it's like she just has to say, oh, he lost the argument, and then make a funny thing about it, and like, oh, anyone listening is just going to like take her word for it, I guess.
Well, that's exactly right. That's to me like a really important observation, because I made the same observation you did. She just did like OMG kind of a reaction.
Yeah.
There's no analysis or debate over like what Gutfeld just said,
right? Which
is true. He just actually made an argument.
He actually was principled. The guy's like, oh, with Social Security, he thought he had him, and then he's like, yeah, actually, Social Security is socialist.
And I know what to do more than the government. So he's making a case, and her response isn't to analyze that argument. She just says, oh my God, he lost the argument. And to me, that's like the intellectual level of these people. Like they don't even think,
or the audience,
analytically.
The audience. OMG, he lost that argument. It's like, what? Were you watching the same clip as me?
Seriously, though, there are many different definitions of socialism, depending on who you ask. And just because a country has socialist
definitions, depending on who you ask.
Doesn't mean it's a socialist country. There are degrees of socialism. So let's just start out with a safe Wikipedia description.
Hey, by the way, I agree. There's degrees of socialism. Right?
Not really. I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think, and again, this is where we need nuance, because, when we step back from it, we'd say, no, can the government initiate force or not? Right? I mean, either the government's intervening in the economy or it's not. And yes, we have two extremes. We would have laissez-faire or, full socialism where the government controls everything. And so, yeah, she's right. She's right. And we would both agree that there are degrees of government intervention. But in principle, there's either, and this is why, because she's not defining it and because, we're not having an adult conversation, we're not finding the true pivot point around which you discuss capitalism versus socialism, which is the initiation of force principle. So, you and I would say, no, it's black or white. Either the government can initiate force or not. And yeah, they can perpetrate more or less violence against you, but ultimately that's what socialism is. And in her fuzzy, hazy way, she's smuggling in this idea that, oh, they're just degrees. And so she's essentially taking advantage of this capitalist context in which massive wealth has been created, right? We have Disney World. She even admitted that. And we have all these great, wonderful things. And we just want a few free things. Just the rich people just got to give us a couple freebies. And so by taking that approach, rather than the more honest approach of saying, no, we want to take over the frickin' world and rule you, she's
Right.
she's smuggling in this sort of like mixed economy.
They love taking the positives of capitalism onto themselves and the degrees of socialism, and now they're saying, oh well, democratic socialism means capitalism with some socialism, as if just because people vote for it means that it won't be full socialism. I don't even understand that. That's just crazy kooky. But let's see what she has to say.
As if you could vote your neighbor's stuff away. If
Right.
I get 51% of the people, I can take your stuff.
Yeah, and as if that won't
No.
lead to, if you start doing that, which we have started doing that in this country, that doesn't lead to full-blown Venezuela, I mean,
Right.
that's
you draw
where
the
that
line.
heads. So once you give up the principle of property rights and things like that, well,
And this is exactly why she's just isolating her comments to education and healthcare, a couple hot button topics like that,
yeah,
that people go, oh, geez, oh yeah, I'd like to have free college, because it appeals to the people listening, where the slippery slope down the road to total Venezuelan, Stalinism, it starts there and we go down this slope. But of course, she doesn't want to make that argument because she knows she would lose.
She's gonna define socialism now, so let's let her do that.
Socialism is a range of economic and social systems characterized by social ownership and democratic control of the means of production. That sounds pretty harmless.
Harmless. Can I refer you to the pile of corpses over the last 100 years? That little harmless. Oh, it's just a sentence. It's just a little
words,
sentence.
Sonny.
Just words.
Sonny, words are just sounds. They don't really mean anything.
Yeah. Oh my God. That just sounds very harmless. Yeah. No property rights.
yeah.
Very harmless. No property rights. All right.
Yeah, no implication to this whatsoever.
Right.
Of course, that's what a collectively edited, non-profit, free encyclopedia would say. And look how that turned out.
So then,
Pretty good.
then she's comparing Wikipedia, calling Wikipedia socialist, and it's not. It's not run by the government.
Right. It's the product of free people making voluntary choices
Yeah.
without government intervention.
Right. There's no government intervention in Wikipedia. So I'm sure if the government ran Wikipedia, it would suck and it wouldn't be accurate either. And especially if the left controlled it, it would be so censored. Come on. So now she's just, she's intentionally mixing her private and public.
That's like the people who say, oh, well, sports leagues are socialist because, or, in a corporation, there's no democracy. They try and conflate the private actions of individuals to and extrapolate that into a government context. So if you and I decide we're just going to do things for free for people, you and I are going to start a charity or something, and it works well, they say, well, see, that's socialism, right? No, it's not socialism.
Right.
We're just free people who decided to do something because we have the freedom and the wealth to do it. That has nothing to do with a situation where the government legally controls private property and rules you. It's
Right.
two different spheres.
Totally. Radically different, because one is force against individuals and the other is not. So, okay. And this is why socialism always turns into thuggery. It's that it requires by its nature force. And so, anyway, okay, let's keep going.
You can think about socialism as democracy for the economy, an economy that takes planning and forethought and doesn't just leave wealth distribution to the invisible hand of the market, which, in case you were wondering, looks like this for the 99% of us.
What do you think of that?
Well, first of all, I love this idea that under capitalism, there's no planning and forethought, as if the Fortune 500 companies are just whimsically going about their daily affairs. And when you walk into a store in the middle of nowhere and there's shelves full of food and beverages, soft drinks, beef jerky, gasoline, whatever the hell you want, eggs, I think that took a little bit of planning and thought. Somehow these capitalists seem to know exactly what we all want every day and make it available to us for very little.
Doug, you're wrong. Bernie Sanders could do it a lot better. I think he could plan it all much better than all these separate companies and grocery stores and stuff. I think Bernie actually has, it's almost godlike, the insight that he has on the market.
And I think, history has shown us that government bureaucracies are just fantastically efficient and brilliant at planning, the actions of hundreds of millions of people. So rather than relying on the voluntary cooperation and the harmony created by the free market price system to determine how products are sold and who buys what, which is real democracy, right? Because in democracy, in a marketplace, you vote with your dollar. What she's saying is not democracy. She's saying, she said, this is like democracy applied to the market. No, it's not. We already have that. You vote with your dollars. Right. If you want something, you buy it. If you don't, you don't. Well, everything's voluntary.
As Bernie Sanders has said, you have too many choices of deodorant. Nobody needs that many choices of deodorant. So if he's in charge, you basically will get one deodorant.
State stick.
Right, state stick. And by the 99% of us get screwed, it's like the 99% of us don't get free stuff. Wah! All right, let's keep playing.
And yet, instead of having an honest conversation about what a more democratic economy could look like in a country with the worst income inequality since before the Great Depression, we hear this.
Listen up, all you Bernie Sanders supporters. We'll say it again. Socialism doesn't work.
Socialism keeps failing.
This is Socialism 101. We've seen it fail over and over again. It's failing now because of problems inherent to socialism.
Myth number 1. Socialism's been attempted and failed. But has it truly?
Myth number 1. Never been tried, everybody. Socialism's never been tried.
What's funny is, so she's created, talk about a straw man, we don't even know really what she means by socialism at this point. She just said it can be anything. There are degrees of it.
Yeah.
And it has something to do with,
it's very clever because now you can't say that it's failed because, no, my degree of it hasn't been tried yet.
Exactly.
Critics point to examples of leaders who took a twisted version of Marxism and implemented it to the extreme, like Pol Pot of Cambodia or Stalin's Soviet Union. But those are better examples of totalitarianism than anything else.
She says those are examples of totalitarianism, not socialism.
Yeah, because when the government decrees at what price you should sell your stuff
and takes all your money, that's not totalitarianism.
No, because 51% of your neighbors voted for it.
Right.
Noam Chomsky, linguist and man who lost award for most desirable lefty grandpa to a younger, hotter Jew, put it, the Soviet Union wasn't actually socialist. He says Russia called itself that to trick those sympathetic to socialism, and the U.S. did the same to make people more afraid of socialism.
The core notion of, at least traditional socialism, is that what you mentioned, that working people have to be in control of production. The Soviet Union is the exact opposite of that. Working people had no control over anything. They were virtual slaves.
Also,
so what do you say about that? Because the idea is that, you see this over and over in socialist countries where people vote in the socialists, and then before you know it, you got the Maduro who's controlling the election, and people don't really have a vote, and it is a totalitarian. And my answer to that is, somebody has to be in charge, first of all. You can't. But because socialism is basically essentially a philosophy of stealing, that the people who are willing and capable of doing that, actually, they're good thieves, they're really good at their job, which is stealing.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the ones, they rise to the top. So it's the most criminal that you end up getting leading, because those are the people who are very good at stealing. And because it's a philosophy of stealing. If you set up, hey, we're gonna have a world where it's just gang warfare, well, then the strongest, best thug is gonna win. That's just how it is. And so that's socialism, and that's why you end up with a dictator. A very clever, good, ruthless dictator.
Right. And unless you prohibit force from relationships in society, which is the essence of capitalism, is the prohibition of, force and the notion of individual rights. You're exactly right. Then if everything is subject to vote, then the people with the most votes get the most stuff. So then what? Well, you want to be the guy in the party that gets the most votes because you get the most stuff. So naturally, once you legalize theft, exactly what you said, you legalize criminality essentially.
Right.
Then the best criminal wins, and the most powerful, the most ruthless criminal wins. And as socialism fails, as it always does, as soon as you introduce some piece of socialism anywhere, and it begins to fail relative to other sectors of the economy, people call for more government intervention to solve the chaos created by socialism, and that leads to calls for more and more power. And then the government has two choices. It can either liberate that section of the economy, or it can become more ruthless and impose higher price controls and have more draconian regulations, and then start to threaten to kill businessmen if they don't comply. So you get the situation of escalating violence in order to preserve the power of the state, as opposed to a free situation. And so you have escalating criminality and more ruthless people seizing the reins of power.
And that's not theory. We've seen that over and over and over and over and over and over again. Okay.
I judge an ideology on its most extreme example.
Why do that?
It's like judging a love of baseball. By
Most
the Red
extreme
Sox
example. Every example turns into that. Okay, but now she's going to get into Denmark and Norway and all that BS.
Red Sox into his forehead with a broken Miller Lite. Loving baseball is the least of his problems. Funny enough, though, even baseball isn't safe from the myth that socialism has failed. Listen to this announcer calling a Dodgers game suddenly go off on socialism when a Venezuelan player steps up to bat.
Socialism failing to work as it always does, this time in Venezuela.
Yeah,
talk
awesome.
About giving everybody something free, and all of a sudden there's no food to eat. Anyway, 0-2.
Anyway,
oh my God.
0-2. Anyway, 0-2.
It's weird that she even played that as if it's just prima facie, that's just beyond the pale to her, or something that he even would say something like, why? He's exactly right.
He's exactly right.
He's
anyway,
to Venezuela, a great example.
0-2.
She just
Truly hope that somewhere out there is a Spanish language announcer mentioning the failures of capitalism when calling an American soccer game.
Bueno, son malos porque no hay dinero en el fútbol. No es como el fútbol americano donde hay muchos momentos para publicidades. El capitalismo vence al deporte. Piénsenlo. 0-2.
Yes, Venezuela is going through an insane political crisis right now, but it's not clear that crisis has anything to do with their socialist policies. And since that would take another 10 minutes to break down, instead, we threw a couple of links to articles below for you to read. Yes.
Hey, by the way, is one failure of capitalism that we have so much wealth that we've created sports leagues where people can play games for a living, and we can enjoy games? Is that maybe that's not a failure of capitalism? Maybe the fact that she's reporting on that on a phone that was created by capitalists, and she's recording a video.
Yeah. What I found funny is that
internet computer network that connects the entire population of the earth.
Their example is that Americans don't have soccer because you can't really advertise during soccer games or something. And I'm like, I don't care that we don't have soccer. Does anybody care? Honestly, just because we don't enjoy the sport of other countries. That's somehow a
And
failure
we do
of
have,
our
and in
country.
fact, we do have soccer, by the way.
Yeah, but they suck. Right? Okay, more.
Well,
But what we never hear when discussing Venezuela is how putting their nationalized oil money into social programs led to a dramatic reduction in poverty and an increase in literacy.
What? What reduction of poverty? I mean, really?
how do you define poverty?
It's like unbelievable that she can say that with a straight face. If I were Venezuelan, I'd smack her.
What's the point of being literate
And you can't eat.
if you can't eat and you have no books and you don't have a home
And you have
don't
no
have a
time
car,
to read because you're busy freaking finding food every day.
finding
Honestly.
dogs to eat?
How about Cuba?
But you're literate.
Has socialism...
I can't believe she brings up Cuba as an example of a place that's good.
I know.
failed there?
Yeah,
Cuba
it's
is
failed
not
there,
a democracy,
lady.
for sure. But it also has the highest literacy rate in all of
Again with the
Latin
literacy. And where are we getting these statistics from Castro? We have everybody here is literate. 100% literacy. Wow, we're doing such a good job.
Yeah, I remember reading a book in junior high that they had at our school about socialism, and one of the claims was that there was 100% employment. Like, we have zero unemployment because by definition everyone worked for the state. So once again, like, what does that statistic mean?
Right.
Anyways, like, it's from their government, and secondly, who cares about literacy? Like, I'd rather be illiterate and wealthy.
Weren't
And have a great life.
Weren't Southern blacks 100% employed during slavery?
Yes.
I think there was
unemployment rate
100% employment for black slaves in the South.
And if they had
Call
taught
me
them how to
crazy.
read, then there would have been 100% literacy among the slaves.
And then it would have been just fine.
It would have been a utopia for them.
Right.
Not to mention free healthcare and free higher education. And now they're developing a lung cancer vaccine. And
The day that Cuba cures cancer, I will. I'll take back everything.
I mean, that's where we're getting into crazy Never Land here. Cuba has a lung cancer vaccine.
Yeah.
So she's going to put the accomplishments of the Cuban healthcare industry against the accomplishments of the American healthcare industry.
Yeah, please. Oh my God.
You really want to go down that road, huh?
Right.
means they'll be able to safely smoke all the cigars that we can't even import. Instead, we've been left with vaping, which is somehow less cool than cancer. Another myth we hear is that socialism is too expensive. But too expensive for who? In France, the government covers all or pays back at least 70% of healthcare costs, which meant a lot when this couple had twins.
Even though the boys were delivered by cesarean section and Nomi spent 9 days in a private room, leaving the hospital they paid 19 euros.
19 euros! Coincidentally, the dollar price of an Uber ride to the ER in the US to avoid going into debt over an ambulance ride. Compare that French experience to an American couple who went bankrupt after also having twins who were premature.
It was 2.2 million. Oh, we lost everything. We paid every bill we could. We sold everything we could. We sold our car. We sold our furniture. We sold our clothing.
But guess what? Our baby's alive. We sold everything. We mortgaged it. We sold our 401ks, but we have a living child. You know? I mean, I know people in France who have fairly minor health problems, and they're just living with them because they can't get decent, just basic health care. But you can have a baby and pay 19 euros? Thank goodness.
Well, free healthcare is free and it's worth every penny, right?
Yeah.
This is, again, we could go down the entire road of the universal healthcare argument, which we don't want to get sidetracked on. But of course, first of all, this is a huge context drop because she's using some anecdote by a guy who goes to the hospital and has a $19 payment. Well, somebody paid for it.
Right. Yeah, that beautiful baby of his is going to go on to have a shitty job and get taxed 70% for the rest of his life with no opportunity, you know?
Right. So there's one example of a baby and, this guy didn't pay for it. Well, someone paid for him. So why was it fair that someone, not him, paid for it? How is that morally good?
Yeah.
And secondly, what about the consequences or the long-term consequences of a system in which, some people pay all the freight and some people don't have to pay anything? Well, like you said, when that's the system, well, yeah, maybe babies get delivered, but what if you have a broken leg or you have cancer or something? Do you have to wait in line to get care?
Well,
what quality is the care?
Just taking the two examples you have here, I bet you that the premature birth survival rate is probably a lot higher in the U.S. than in France. Just taking babies into account. Okay, let's keep going.
We sold everything.
Jesus. But you might be thinking, well, France spends more money on healthcare, and you would be wrong. France spends 11% of its GDP, and the U.S. spends 17.2% of our GDP on healthcare. And France is consistently ranked as having one of the best healthcare systems in the world. Well,
overall efficiency. You get in and you get out.
Yeah, you don't get it. So it's infinitely efficient.
Last when compared to the 10 most developed countries.
Okay.
But
did you want to say something?
Yeah, what I was going to say is comparing France's system to the U.S. system it's not a representation of capitalism versus socialism. The United States does have socialized medicine, and the problems that have resulted and the crises that have resulted from our system are a consequence of government intervention in healthcare and can only be solved by liberating it. High insurance premiums and the pre-existing condition issue and third-party insurance because of the tax code and
good point.
Mandated coverages. And, again, this is an entire book, but the way in which government is intervening in the economy has caused the crisis. Before that, we had we had freedom in healthcare, and we had the best healthcare system for the least amount of money.
But it's still the best in the world because it is the freest. So,
right side, Trump is working hard to make us not a developed country. So, what about students? Is socialism too expensive for them? Because in many countries around the world, university tuition is essentially free. In Germany, it's even free for foreigners to benefit from, like Americans.
I had heard things like I'd be able to drink, I'd have health care. Each month it cost about 600 euro to live here. My room, train tickets, school, food. My main motivation, of course, was saving money.
Was it? Because I'm pretty sure the first thing you said was you'd be...
My main motivation was to have someone else pay for my education.
Like, what if 50 million people showed up in Germany?
Yeah, right. They did.
You can take a boy.
They did, Doug.
Exactly.
South Carolina.
And secondly,
you can't take a tall boy out of his hand.
Is it still playing?
No.
Well, I was going to say is, what's the basis for claiming that higher education is even valuable? It's only valuable, there's this presumption that going to college is somehow of value to everybody, and the government should pay for it, meaning your neighbor should pay for it. Why?
Right. Okay.
Again, that's like...
Especially today when it's like all indoctrination anyway and nobody's learning anything. All right, I'm going to keep playing.
Germany doesn't see free college as a drain on the economy, but believes that investing in young people's education, even that of non-Germans, will benefit the German economy in the long run. Compare that to how we pay for school in the United States, which is basically an FUIOU, as student debt just hit $1.5 trillion. Though to be fair, student debt is a job creator for student debt collect.
This is, like you said, similar to healthcare. This is another example of how government meddling has created a horrible situation, this expensive college that no one can afford and these horrible loans and everything that everybody's got, when half these people shouldn't have gone to college to begin with, and people are getting degrees that are meaningless on the marketplace because it's free, quote unquote, and then they go, oh shit, I have a $50,000 loan I have to pay off. If they're lucky, it's only $50,000. And then they're saddled with that for the rest of their life.
And they only got the loan because the government subsidizes student loans. So the fact that everyone can go to college because you can get a government loan, well, what does that do? It drives up the price. So the price is higher. So now we need more government loans. And then the price gets higher because there's more demand and we need more government loans. And now tuition costs are out of control. You've got tons of people going to college who shouldn't go to college because it's free, quote unquote. And they have, like she said, $1.5 trillion worth of debt that's subsidized by the government. So again, government meddling has caused this.
And
not
what
the
they want
marketplace.
is instead more, just like you were saying with the socialism slippery slope, they want more government to solve this government created problem. Now we need to pay off the loans for everybody and give college away for free. Free being anyone working pays for it. Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah.
Germany's example flies in the face of another myth spouted about socialist policies, that they're not good for business. They stifle innovation and competition, and heavy regulations and taxes only make companies move abroad.
Can I just say socialism and business are like opposites? Since business is capitalism? How do you have business in socialism? You don't. It's owned by the government.
Bangladesh! But take Denmark. The government spends a lot on job training and education, especially for the unemployed. And Danish companies participate in these programs because it means they have a stronger workforce. So when Danes get laid off, they get help learning a new skill that isn't putting together IKEA furniture for strangers. Mostly because they hate the Swedes. In 2015, Denmark was ranked by Forbes as being the best country for business, and is consistently ranked as the happiest country on earth, something Fox News blowhards like Bill O'Reilly desperately try to find a way to undermine.
When I heard the Danes are the happiest people on earth, I thought back to my ancestors in Ireland who were beheaded and raped by the Danish Vikings. And I don't know if that was a happy experience.
Yeah, Bill, way to dunk on the libs by bringing up an unrelated grudge you've been carrying with you since the year 800.
So now she's defending Vikings. It's just so weird. I don't understand.
By the way, what is job training? You ever notice that liberals always talk, they just love this idea of job training. That, you know, these white knights, these central planning geniuses, you know, somehow people get laid off and they have job training waiting for them. Have you ever noticed that this is a canard that you constantly hear?
Yeah.
People, I think, are pretty good at figuring out, you know, if we have a marketplace and there are companies that need workers, well, then they pay for the training for the worker, or the worker can go pay and get his own education to do what he wants.
Pay. You go on YouTube, you can learn 50,000 new skills on there, you know? I mean, if you want to be relevant in today's market, go online and take a class on YouTube for free.
Right now, there's a shortage of truck drivers, so these companies are paying for these guys to go to these truck driving schools, and they're offering them like six-figure salaries to drive trucks.
Yeah, pretty
But we
awesome.
need the government's job training.
Got to have the government figuring out what jobs people should have and what training they should have. I mean, come on. Look at what YouTube has done for tutorials. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, just this capitalist company, which is so free and so unregulated, and what it's done for tutorials is amazing. You can learn anything on YouTube. Okay.
Of course.
Later in the same conversation, the intrepid reporters hit on another myth about socialism. The "it'll never work in America" myth.
There are 5.5 million Danes.
Right.
And that's it. We have 300 million people here, Bill.
Okay, this myth I really don't understand the logic of. If there are more people paying more taxes into a social welfare state, doesn't that mean more money?
Or more welfare people, actually. I mean, I don't know why she thinks the opposite would be true, that more people would be like, hey, I'll sign up to work instead of get the handout. Like, who would choose to work instead of get the handout?
But again, this is a rationalistic argument because, you know, imagine a city of 20 people. You could probably have a situation where they all like exist in a commune and it somehow all works out. But as you get more and more people, and the division of labor gets more complex, and people, you know, we have people making shoes in one part of the country and someone's picking bananas and someone's making computer chips and rocket engines, and you have more and more division of labor across a bigger space of land, and you've got hundreds of millions of people making decisions, it becomes absolutely clear that that can't be controlled by central planners. So whereas it is true that in a small area, you can have some degree of quote unquote central planning or cooperation that looks like socialism in some way. I think putting money in the pot.
I don't agree with that. I think that depends on culture, because if all you have to do is look at Jamestown and you know, the story of Jamestown and how you just have a few hundred people, And because of the culture of a lot of the people there, which were these British high society, the idle rich, these weren't, tradesmen who knew how to work and knew how to, put things together and had a lifetime of working hard and understood what that meant. You had a lot of people who were loafers, who were just trying to loaf on others, and it completely failed. And everybody was starving, and even starving people wouldn't get off their ass and do things. And it wasn't until they quit doing it that way that they went to a more capitalist system that things started working out.
Well, exactly right. You're exactly right. And I guess what I was trying to say is the only hope for some sort of communistic type of system to work would be a very heterogeneous group of people who all somehow share these values, who somehow make this work. And even then it would be limited. Like, for example, I lived in a little town once that was pretty affluent, and we had a public school, and people chipped in for the public school. But okay, great. So, but everyone else were 99% of your life is capitalist, and we had this little public school that everyone chipped in for. So I'm just saying, like, to the extent that you have like a small little town where the cultural values are such that, you can have some little aspect of like everyone chipping in, it can look kind of like socialism to them. But what I'm saying is, in a massive, complex society where you have increasingly increased division of labor, socialism utterly fails because no central planning can ever work. It can't work even in small groups of people. And as we know, even in these Norwegian and in Denmark and these Norwegian countries or these Scandinavian countries, they're generally capitalist countries. They have higher levels of social programs, and they have higher taxes, and they also have correspondingly less productive economies as a result. And they do have a lot of welfare and a lot of loafers and things like that. So they have their own problems. But to hold that up as some sort of like example of quote unquote socialism is ridiculous. The only reason they can do those things is because they're productive capitalists in those countries creating enough wealth for them to steal.
That's democratic socialism, I think. I think that's the ideal for them, is that you still have some capitalism. So anyway, okay, let's keep playing.
But suddenly Americans don't know how to scale up? We gave the world Starbucks, Walmart, and King Kong. We're all about scaling up. Another myth about socialism is that it requires big government, and that government is not democratic. But look at Norway, a country whose economic model has been called a 21st century version of socialism, and has also been ranked as the world's best democracy. After the global financial crisis of 2008, Norway decided not to tighten its purse strings. Instead, under a socialist finance minister, federal control of financial assets in sectors like oil expanded, and the government directed that money into their sovereign wealth fund, or national bank, which is part of the reason Norwegians enjoy benefits like universal health care, education, guaranteed parental leave, and no national debt.
Like, that was so much information that I can't even process it. And I think that's part of the, you can't even process that. Like, what did they do? I don't even know, It's like,
it's like a typical liberal argument, right? They're all over the place. I want to step back to something she said. Remember when she said that Walmart and Starbucks were examples of scaling up? Are those not capitalist corporations scaling up because they're private, profit-motivated, greedy capitalists figuring out how to scale their corporations to multinational? Like, that to me is like the cardinal example of why only capitalism allows for economies of scale and scaling up.
Right. Okay.
As democracy
but then
goes,
also on the
Norwegians
oil,
are automatically.
Yes.
It's true. Like, that's one example of where they had so much oil, they were able to sell it, and it led to a high standard of living. So is she for us? Is she all for us selling crude oil then? And drilling for oil?
The Saudis also have a lot of oil, but I don't want to live there either. You know what I mean? Don't want to live in a Muslim dictatorship, thank you. All right.
Registered to vote, and 78% did in the last election, compared to our 55% in the last election.
I want to talk about this for a second. I watched this and I was just curious. I went and looked at the United States voter participation over the history of our country. And It was like 70 to 80% until 1900. And then it just kind of declined, and it's been in the 50s for several decades now. Isn't that interesting?
But why is voter participation of value? Like, if we have a small government, who cares what the government does? You know what I mean?
I just wonder, over the course of
I
our
want
history,
less voter participation.
over the course of our history, we have changed who gets to vote. And as we've added more groups, we've gotten less voter participation. So, I don't know how important it is. Does it matter? I never thought voting was such a big deal anyway. And that just means that 45% of the people can't read or...
Literacy.
Yeah, some of it's probably they don't even know what's going on. They're just living their life, whatever.
Not that the stakes were high. Norway has 9 parties instead of our 2, a parliamentary system of proportional representation instead of our winner-take-all system, and Norwegians have reindeer. Can we have nothing? When all of the myths above fail them, conservatives always resort to a final myth about socialism, which is capitalism is better. Die-hard capitalists insist that is no alternative to their system.
I thought this was already well established that capitalism is better, and we're now just trying to make the moral arguments at this point. Can anyone really refute that at this point?
By the way, she decried the winner takes all. What the hell is socialism?
Yeah, that's right. I was thinking that too. As she was saying that, I thought, so does that mean she'll allow California to go back to a 2-party system? Instead of, they passed a law here that allows literally winner take all, and that's why the Democrats are just in complete control of the state at this point.
I think Castro was pretty much winner take all.
Yeah,
right?
I think Maduro's on that policy too.
It's claimed as many, if not more, lives than socialism, from colonialism to rampant poverty caused by neoliberal.
Is colonialism capitalism?
No. So what is capitalism? She doesn't even know what capitalism is. Just whatever happens.
Its dominance. Capitalism is still better. Just watch how economist Milton Friedman, the Bunsen of free enterprise, defended his ideology in an interview with a barrage of whataboutisms.
But it seems to reward not virtue as much as ability to manipulate the system.
And what does reward virtue? You think the communist commissar rewards virtue? I think you're taking a lot of things for granted. And just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us.
That's one of the best quotes of his. It's a really good polemical argument, and they chop the heck out of it, so there's almost nothing there, and then criticize it. Just weird.
Norway, we've been over this. They're with the reindeer. But if that kind of
Bernie Sanders is an angel, he would do a good job.
Racism is what defends unfettered capitalism. Maybe we should rethink it. But listen, I am happy to be proven wrong, which is why I'm going to consult my conservative panel. Hey, conservative panel, what do you think about all these socialist myths?
Well, they're not myths. They're not myths at all. Generosity is evil. If you give...
Generosity? Socialism isn't generosity. Stealing from your neighbor to give his stuff away? That's not generosity.
Exactly.
Free handouts, they're going to have to eat rats out of buckets. And don't ask me to link cause and effects. Cause and effect is fake news.
Okay, listen, conservative panel, I know you're confused and angry because things aren't always black or white. History is fluid, and your president is going down in a fiery ball of lies. But maybe keep an open mind about socialism. Capitalism is built on greed, which, as it turns out, is not best for either people or business or the planet.
Built on greed, which is not best for everybody. I don't...
Do you notice just that her conservative panel was this preposterous, straw man, just screaming and bellowing?
Yeah.
I
hate generosity! I hate generosity!
Where, Greg Gutfeld actually had, what's his name, Alan Holmes? That guy that was on, that she played, clip she played, that was Alan Holmes.
Yeah, that was a real
CNN. Person. And he was actually making a real argument, and they were going back and forth. She just has a straw man. And by the way, we have unfettered capitalism. That's got to be the biggest myth ever claimed.
Yeah.
We have a system where you can barely fart without it being regulated in this country.
I know.
And somehow this is an example of, like, they always have this myth that, like, capitalism is whatever America has done. So instead of arguing in principle, which is capitalism is, a free market, a real free market, and let's try and find examples of where that happened. And let's try and, isolate, like, the effects of government tampering in the economy. No, it's just whatever America's done, that's capitalism. If America nationalizes the banking system, if America has this fucked up healthcare system that we have now or if there was colonialism or slavery, that's capitalism. It's just whatever America has done. That's the definition of capitalism.
Maybe capitalism could use some socialism. Americans are innovative and hopeful, so maybe the world has yet to see the best of socialism. And even capitalism.
Actually, Jesus turned the other cheek to ignore a homeless person.
I don't even get
once again for watching news.
I don't even get that. What? Yeah. So Americans can do it, you guys. We can do it. We are the most creative, innovative people on earth. We can do it. We can make socialism work. We can be the only ones who've ever done it.
Why are we innovative and hopeful? We're innovative and hopeful because we're free people who aren't under the yoke of government controls. Like, the way to stifle innovation and stifle hopefulness and stifle generosity is to create a poor population of miserable slaves.
Miserable slaves, people who can't get ahead because any effort they put out is just stolen from them. Or thwarted by regulation, I have, forget really socialist places, but, like, even take some of her examples of Europeans. The Europeans I know, the thing that, and I've had some au pairs now and stuff, and I've really lived among other cultures the last few years. And the biggest difference between me and these young women is optimism. Literally. I mean, they have baked into their culture is this, they don't even have the sense at all that if they just work hard, they'll be able to succeed or achieve something incredible. And I have a new au pair from France, and she was saying that everybody in France, her ambition in life, get this, is to be an event planner. And everybody in France is telling her she can't do it. Like, that's like if you told me, I want to work at McDonald's, but everybody's telling me it can't be done. It's like, event planning is there aren't a lot of barriers to entry to that job here. You want to be an event planner, you can be an event planner tomorrow in the United States. Like, you have that job tomorrow if you want it.
Yeah, you're an event planner right now. Start.
Right, go do it. A little hard work and you'll end up with clients. Can you believe that? Don't you hear that? I mean, you just brought up this concept of optimism. Don't you hear that all the time from people outside the United States, particularly, like, relative to our culture and the sense of life of our movies and, our music and everything else, that most people will say that Americans are optimistic. They're happy. They seem like they want to enjoy life. Why is that? That's our culture. And that's why we relish and revere our freedom, because that's the kind of people we are: self-dependent, self-reliant people who want to cooperate with people voluntarily, not because the government told you to. And that really, when we step back from this, and when I talk to my kids about these issues, like you're trying to explain this to a little kid, you can't get bogged down in the minutia of, well, let's talk about healthcare policy. I think when you're arguing this stuff, you got to go take a really big picture view, right? Like, look, we believe in controlling your own life and controlling your destiny and cooperating voluntarily with people without force. And if you want to work with someone or collaborate with someone or a relationship with someone, all those things are voluntary.
and you have to be free to do that. And the government needs to protect your rights, not to, impede other people from doing that by force. And the result of that is free markets. That's where we start, though. Like you and I start with that fundamental, that moral premise, and that more benevolent view that human beings need to be free to think and act and pursue their values independently and freely. And, there's this sense in these kinds of videos of there's no discussion of that. I mean, it's just this wacky, just accept everything the way it is. There's all this wealth, there's all this stuff. Let's not talk about where that came from or why or what the source of any of that is. There's just all this stuff going on. There's Starbucks and Walmart and there's oil in Norway, and just somehow all that stuff happened. There were no capitalists in Norway that drilled for oil, by the way, to make their country rich.
There were no capitalists in America that figured out how to drill oil. And you know what I'm saying? It's it started with capitalists figuring out that technology.
Right.
In the first place. Right. So
exactly.
Yeah.
It's just all blanked out on. There's just no discussion of that. And it's just, hey, wouldn't it be nice to have free stuff?
Right. That's what it boils down to. It's not just wouldn't it be nice to have free stuff, and wouldn't it be nice if I could feel good about myself to give this person over here free stuff? I'm going to take this guy's money and do that. That's socialism.
And if you're the kind of person that challenges that, you're just some shrieking Jesus freak. Right. Sputtering non sequiturs like this clown that she was,
right.
Jesus turned the other cheek on the home, just this guilt shaming. How dare you not want free stuff for other people?
Right.
So there's, of course, you and I want the greatest for everybody. We're benevolent, loving, caring people. And I think people that are, libertarian and conservative, objectivists are the best, happiest people and the most generous people I know. And capitalists tend to be the most benevolent, generous people I know. And it's exactly the opposite. The liberals that I know are usually the people that are the least generous. They're the most sneering. They're the most nihilistic people. They're the most sarcastic people. You know what I mean? They're just people that are just really have a dark sense of life about them. And that's the sort of attitude they bring to politics.
I think that if you had to choose, there's this example, this philosophic example I've heard given where you're in the water in the ocean and there's two islands. You can swim to one or the other. You have to save yourself. Do you swim to the island with the leftist socialists, or do you swim to the island with the capitalists? Which island do you want to wash up on? Which people do you think will take care of you?
Right. That's great.
You want to wash up in Venezuela or wash up in America?
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway.
And somehow people keep coming here to be exploited by the greedy capitalists. Tens of millions of people want to come to this horrible machine of injustice.
Right. Okay. The rest of this video is just her saying that she's done. The show has been canceled.
We've got
feeling really bad about that.
2 years.
So you can go back and watch her 2 years of videos, because she's only done a few more and then it was canceled in June or something, and I'm not really sure why, but it's actually, she's funny, she's smart, she's cute. This video, I had to do this video for that reason. I just felt there's a lot going for this video, even though they don't actually have much substance.
But Sonny, she's the Cortez, right? She's Cynthia Nixon.
Yeah, right.
This is this generation that's coming up.
Right.
That we need to be on the lookout for and understanding, and sort of have these talking points, because this is coming in a big way. They're not, and this is the point I wanted to make, is this isn't the socialist of old, right? Like the Noam Chomsky, like she quoted in this piece, where, the old socialist professor talking about controlling the means of production and economic plans. This is, like you said, the cute, attractive young lady who's hip and who's making cultural references, who just says, oh, we just want a few free things. Wouldn't that be nice? Just, So we're gonna, social. You guys are crazy. That's chupacabra. That's Bigfoot.
Right.
All we want is just some free stuff. So they're gonna smuggle this in, and it's very seductive. This message is very seductive to an illiterate population of people who grow up on this propaganda.
Right.
And, who are attracted to these kinds of people. And so I don't know how to combat it, other than
make videos.
Just do what we're doing.
That's right. That's all we can do. All right. Well,
we need Sunny to make videos. That's what we need.
Yeah. Well, I'll get back on it soon. So thanks for joining us, Elite Squad. Thanks for being our Elite Squad. And this is just for you. So I'll see you November 1st on the podcast. That will be my next appearance. Although we've got one other audio that we're going to put out, but hope you enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments what you think, and check you later.